We tackled the arcade ports in part 1, but today it's personal. This is the P-list of home-exclusive Commodore 64 versus the Atari 800XL head-to-head, from the split-second jump delay in Pitfall II to the engine tones and tire changes in Pitstop. We're finding out which machine actually wins on its own home turf. There are two kinds of Pitfall players: the ones who swear they were amazing at it, and the ones who remember sinking into that first patch of quicksand like it personally insulted them. I was the second guy. Pitfall wasn't just a game in 1982, it was a rite of passage. David Crane squeezed an entire jungle into the Atari 2600 and somehow made it feel huge. Vine swings, rolling logs, crocodiles snapping like they skipped breakfast. So when Activision brought Pitfall to the Commodore 64 and the Atari 800 in 1984, the real question wasn't whether they could improve it, it was whether they should even touch it. On the Commodore 64, it sticks close to its roots. Earthy greens, brown trunks, yellow platforms. It feels like the 2600 version cleaned up just enough for a computer screen. Familiar, comfortable. The sound carries a little more weight here. The jungle yell lands with presence. Not flashy, not dramatic, just fuller. And when Harry grabs that vine, you hear it. Controls are dependable, press jumpy jumps, no guesswork, no drama, just clean execution. Over on the Atari 800, the colors lean brighter. The jungle pops harder, the palette feels bolder, almost louder. Some people love the Atari color style. Others might say it had too much sugar before bedtime. Interesting. Gameplay feel is nearly identical. Same timing, same responsiveness. You're battling crocodiles, not your joystick. Stack them next to each other and takeaway is clear. These are respectful translations. No reinventions, no risky upgrades, just preservation. The difference comes down to presentation. The Commodore keeps closer to the original's mood and adds slightly richer audio. The Atari is excellent, just brighter and more stylized. For me, the Commodore 64 takes Pitfall. Not by much, just enough to feel like home. If Pitfall was about preservation, the sequel shifts gears completely. I had a moment recently with Pitfall II on the Commodore 64 where I genuinely thought something was wrong. I hit jump, and Harry hesitated. Not a glitch, not a bad joystick, just a beat. A tiny, agonizing delay that makes you tilt your head and go, wait, did I miss it? And yes, this is on real hardware. Holy Moses. To understand why that split second matters, you have to remember what Pitfall II was in 1984. David Crane pushed the original Atari 2600 so hard he had to put custom hardware inside the cartridge. The DPC chip wasn't a gimmick, it was the only way to handle the 4-channel music in the larger scrolling world. This wasn't just a sequel, it was a technical flex. When it arrived on the home computer, something interesting happened behind the scenes. The producer at Activision asked both programmers how they'd use all that extra memory. The C64 guy said he'd create the finest graphics ever seen. The Atari 800 guy, he built an entire second level as an Easter egg. Different priorities, different results. Let's start with the 64. The colors are rich, the trees feel alive, and it looks polished. One Lemon 64 user called it an absolute god platformer, and visually they're not wrong. But then there's that jump. In a game built on timing and trust, that hesitation changes everything. You stop reacting and start preloading your inputs. Your brain does math instead of playing, like trying to have a conversation on a bad phone line. You can get used to it, but you shouldn't have to. Then you load it on the Atari 800. Same cavern, same iconic soundtrack. You press jump, instant, no hesitation, no mental math. The game feels connected to your fingertips. Atari Age folks have praised this version for years, and the C64 wiki flat out calls it by far the most recommendable version. And that connection matters. There's no razor-thin debate here. The C64 version is good, visually strong, faithful, but the Atari version feels right. Sometimes a split second doesn't look like much on screen, but in your hands, It's the difference between frustration and flow. Let me ask you something. Why does a mummy have a gun? I booted this up and I'm roaming Egyptian pyramids grabbing treasure when suddenly the Pharaoh pulls out a firearm like he's wandered in from a western. What the H? This is ancient Egypt, not high noon. And somehow, that nonsense is part of the charm. Pharaoh's curse hit both systems in 1983. It's a maze of keys, doors, elevators, traps, and that infamous bat that loves to drag you somewhere you did not plan on going. I had this early in my C64 days. It got buried under new arrivals, but every time I came back to it, it was fun. On the Commodore, the music immediately sets the mood. It actually sounds like you're inside a tomb. Dramatic, slightly mysterious. It draws you in. Visually, both versions are close. On my setup, the C64 looks a touch sharper, but that's just video output differences. The real story is feel. The C64 feels slightly tighter, jumps trigger when expected. When you're lining up a platform and that claw is lurking below, that reliability matters. That claw pops up like it's personally offended you exist. The bat behaves the same on both systems. Sometimes helpful, sometimes cruel, like getting kidnapped by a carnival ride. Switch to the Atari and the core gameplay is nearly identical. Same trap, same layout, same tension. The music doesn't quite sell the tomb atmosphere the same way, but it's functional. The only consistent difference I noticed was diagonal jumping. Occasionally, it didn't trigger exactly when I expected. Not broken, just a little less confident. Line them up on real hardware, and this is another close call. Both are solid, both are still surprisingly fun decades later, but the slightly stronger atmosphere and marginal sharper controls give Pharaoh's curse to the Commodore 64. Not a blowout, just a cleaner raid through the pyramid. Some games are good, some games are important, and some games hit you at exactly the right age. I own Pitstop, complete in box, manual, cartridge, box, the whole thing. And every time I pull it out, I'm not just thinking about racing, I'm thinking about Mound Elementary. We had an Atari set up in the school library, Popeye, Miner 2049er, and Pitstop. I remember watching my friend Russell playing it first. I've been used to Atari's 2600 racers like Night Driver, Straight Road, Dodge Blocks, Try Not to Crash. Then this shows up. You actually pull into the pits. You change tires, you refuel. There's a guy waving the flag to send you back out. Good Lord, for 1983, that felt advanced. Pitstop was developed by Epix and originally built for home computers, not as an arcade conversion. The hook wasn't speed alone, it was management. Tire wear matters, engine strain matters, pit timing matters. It added strategy to something that could have just been another top-down racer. On the C64, the game feels clean and steady. The track is clear, cars are readable, steering is predictable and consistent. No weird difficulty spikes, no control quirks. The pit sequence still works. It's simple, but there's tension when you're trying to get back out there before someone closes the gap. Sound-wise, the engine tone runs a bit higher. It communicates speed, but it leans sharp. Still effective. On the Atari, everything is nearly the same. Gameplay same, difficulty same, controls same, graphics very close. No missing features, no surprise downgrade. The one subtle difference you notice is the engine tone. On the Atari, it feels deeper, fuller, a little less high pitch when you're pushing it. It's not dramatic, but it's there. Community discussions tend to agree. Pitstop is almost identical between the two systems. No major controversy, no dramatic edge. And that lines up with what you see on real hardware. The graphics are close, the mechanics are identical, the strategy layers holds up on both. Even the audio difference, which noticeable, isn't enough to tilt the entire experience. This one is even. The nostalgia hits, the innovation still impresses, and both versions deliver the same smart design. The deeper engine tone of the Atari isn't enough to override the parody. This is a tie. Now this is where things change. Pitstop was clever. Pitstop II was competitive. 1984, epics again, and suddenly, you're not just racing the clock or computer cars anymore. You're racing your brother, your buddy, head to head. Top screen, bottom screen, same track, different positions. For a home computer in the mid-'80s? Mercy. It's widely considered one of the earliest split-screen simultaneous two-player racing games. Not just alternating turns, not taking turns at the same time, on the same machine. That was a leap. Pitstop II keeps the strategy layer. Tire wear, fuel management, pit timing. But now it's competitive, and that changes everything. Because when it's just you, a slow pit stop is annoying. When it's your brother watching you fumble in the pits, that's brutal. On the C64, the presentation feels sharper, the cars look cleaner, more defined. The sense of speed feels smoother. When you shift gears, the sound has a smooth mechanical build to it. The engine tone feels layered and intentional. It sounds right. The split-screen implementation is steady, no obvious stutter, just clean head-to-head racing. Now the pit stop here is different from the original. Instead of 4 crew members, you got 2 guys handling the work. One focused on tires, one on fuel. No flagman waving you out this time. It's more streamlined. Some might miss the full crew, but mechanically, it works. The Atari version takes a different visual approach. The pit crew returns to more of a 4-person setup, closer to the original pit stop feel. You get that fuller crew presentation again, including the send-off roll. If you love that from the first game, that familiarity hits, but the trade-off shows everywhere. The cars look softer, a bit blob-like in color compared to the C64 cleaner sprites. The menus and UI feel plainier. The sense of speed isn't quite as strong. Community discussions often describe this version as less smooth. And that lines up. Engine sound, it's harsher, not as smooth in the gear changes. It gets the job done, but it doesn't have that same polish. Even the pit lane positioning differs. Right side instead of left, which suddenly changes the feel. Nothing's broken, but it's noticeably less refined. Controls are effectively the same. Core play is intact on both, but this isn't Pitstop I parody anymore. The C64 version feels smoother, sounds better, looks cleaner. The Atari version keeps the fuller pit crew presentation, which is a nice touch, but overall, polish favors Commodore. And when you're doing split-screen racing, polish matters. Because when you're battling someone in the same room, every frame and every sound counts. Pitstop II is an upgrade over the original, especially for competitive play. Both versions are playable, but the smoother performance, stronger sound design, and sharper visuals give the Commodore 64 the edge here. C64 takes this one. This one has a vibe. The second it starts, it feels like Blue Max decided to go diagonal. And then Choplifter showed up and said, hey, don't forget the rescues. You're not just shooting, you're managing altitude. You're having to be at the same level as the enemy to hit it. Then you land and let people run to your ship while everything is still trying to take you out. Now we're working. Isometric shooter, rescue missions, diagonal flight path, simple idea. But the execution is where the two versions separate. Right away, the C64 looks finished. Your ship has a shape and color. The enemies actually look like spacecraft, defined bodies, visible detail, that little globe center that makes them read clearly against the background. They don't look like placeholders. Sound-wise, it's cleaner. The effect sits well with the music. Nothing feels harsh or stepped on. And here's where things get interesting. On the C64, enemies shoot projectile stars at you. They travel across the screen. You're not just dodging ships, you're dodging moving hazards that force real reactions. That escalates the pressure fast. It makes the C64 version feel more demanding, more alive. The Atari version keeps the same blueprint. Movement feels the same, altitude alignment works the same, rescue mechanic works the same, but visually, it's stripped down. Your ship is plain. Enemies can look like red blobs by comparison. It's functional, but not refined. Minimalism was strong with this one. Sound isn't broken, but it feels rougher, less cohesive. And in the levels that I played, those projectile stars weren't there. That lowers the intensity. Whether that changes later in the game or not, early impressions matter. And the C64 hits harder right out of the gate. Same design, different craftsmanship. The C64 version looks sharper, sounds cleaner, feels more aggressive with that added threats. The Atari version plays fine, but is pared down. This one isn't subtle. Panther feels more complete on the Commodore 64. Cleaner visuals, better sound, more intensity. C64 takes it. This one feels weird the second you start it. Your craft looks like a radioactive spider that makes some bad life choices. The whole world feels toxic, like you should not be there. And honestly, you shouldn't. You're flying across a radiated planet, collecting artifacts, trying to get them back to base without getting shredded by barriers, columns, or drones. It's not a pure shooter, it's navigation under pressure, and that's what makes it interesting. Released in 1984 by Activision, Pastfinder wasn't just about shooting, it was about death and shadow. And your ship and its shadow both matter. You're not just avoiding obstacles horizontally, you're managing altitude and position in a way that makes the grid feel layered. That's why it feels tense. You're always one bad alignment away from disaster. On the C64, the presentation is clean. The spider-like craft has definition. The color contrast makes obstacles readable. The grid glows in a classic Activision way. And the sound has a steady pulse underneath it, almost like a radiation heartbeat. It builds tension without overdoing it. You hold the button down and the ship keeps firing. Simple, smooth, responsive. The controls feel tight, not floaty, not slippery. It's not flashy, but it's intentional. And here's the interesting part. The Atari version extremely close. Movements feel the same, continuous firework the same. Obstacle behavior feels the same, mission structure feels the same. Graphics are comparable, slight palette shift, sure, but nothing dramatic. The spider craft still reads clearly, the grid still glows, sound character changes naturally. It's more that sharp, pokey edge, but it's not weaker, just different. This is real parody. This isn't one of those dramatic episodes. Same design, same pacing, same tension. If you were blindfolded someone and handed them the joystick, they'd recognize the game before the platform. And honestly, that's impressive, because this isn't really a shooter. It's basically DoorDash in a nuclear wasteland. This one's even. Pastfinder plays tight on both systems. No major downgrades, no missing mechanics, no clear technical advantage. Just a strange, creative Activision title that works almost identical on both machines. Call it a tie. The Commodore 64 might bring the polish, but the Atari 800XL's precision is hard to ignore. If you missed the P-Arcade ports in part 1, click here and catch up. And if you want to help me keep this real hardware running, hit that join button below for exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the collection. I'll see you in the next deep dive. Boom.